All right then. So we've just had our first game week of the Premier League season. It's been a lot of thrilling moments so far in the season. A few shocking results in my opinion, but just based on the first group of games that we saw, it should be a really fun and entertaining football season. And this is just the beginning. I'm looking really forward to it. A lot of interesting and new signings happened over the summer, so I might be talking a bit about that. I got a bunch of questions that were asked of me, and I'm pretty much just gonna go over the ones that I feel I can elaborate a lot on. But first of all, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting the page for the past I don't know how many months now. Watching football, watching the Premier League has been a huge part of my life. Honestly, I don't know how my life would be very different without football in it. It would be very different. I don't know what it would be. That's just how important the sport is to me and how important it's been in my life. When I'm bored, sometimes when I'm bored at university or something like that, I'll just scroll and see what's going on in the footballing world. But once again, thanks to everyone who's been supporting the page. I see great conversations happen all the time on posts that I make, and that's pretty much like the sort of community that I want to create. One where people are posting, positive, feedback that engage, that create interesting conversations for football. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. And it's been a wonderful ride so far. And now, the page itself, honestly, I've been flipping into names. At first I was thinking calling it the Top Corner, but now I'm thinking it's probably going to be called the Kingdom of Spectators. Either that or the Spectators Kingdom. I'm not 100% sure. I might do a vote on one of those two. Yeah, so either the Spectators Kingdom or the Kingdom of Spectators. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, here I am. I've been kind of slacking on the recordings. I know I promised to do one end of last season, and it never really materialized because I just never got around. It'd be very time consuming to record, and then I'd have to buy a physical mic. So pretty much what I ended up doing is I bought just a small blue snowball mic, and this is a mic, just an audio recording mic, and I'll just do a few of these. I'll see how it goes, and then maybe if it really takes off, maybe I'll start doing more video recordings. And something in the future that I'm hoping to do is like in the future, invite guests, just to talk football, what's happened in the past month. And by guests I mean pretty much my friends. I have a lot of friends who are really into football, so. And who know just as much as me, or if not even more. I know North Americans, Canadians, Americans, there's that perception that we don't really know much about the sport and all that, but I'm telling you, there's a big football culture out here. The sport is really growing. It's really taking off. If you come here and visit the country, you'd actually be really surprised how popular football is. There's supporters group clubs out here. There's a lot of really knowledgeable people who are into football, and it's just beautiful seeing how the sport has taken off in the country within the last I don't know, 10-15 years. It's really taken off, and it's just something that's great for me to see. And I'm just really glad to be a part of it. But I'm gonna get started on the questions now. Actually, like I said, lots of things happened over the weekend. Probably the biggest talking point, in my opinion, was United's 4-0 victory over Chelsea. And my thoughts were that I was watching the game, and Chelsea actually didn't play too badly. Like, I know the scoreline was 4-0, but Tammy Abraham hit the post when it was 0-0, I believe. If that ball goes into the net, that possibly changes the whole complexion of the game, and we're sitting here talking about a different scoreline. And even before United scored their first goal, Chelsea, they were creating chances, and it was some free-flowing football. So I kind of think the scoreline is a bit harsh on them, but at the end of the day, United took their chances and Chelsea didn't. So that's why it's 4-0. And I always knew that Chelsea would struggle without Eden Hazard. And that leads me to my first question, which are thoughts about Chelsea. Thoughts on Chelsea, how they do this season. Well, ending last season, I knew that without Eden Hazard in their team, that they'd struggle a lot because he was their top scorer, their top assister. He created the most chances. And without him now, I knew that Chelsea, especially now that they had a transfer ban and their attack wasn't really the best. I know they brought in Pulisic, but he's 20, 21. He's still a kid, so he's not gonna have the same impact as Eden Hazard. That's just wishful thinking. So I always knew that beginning of the season, Chelsea failed. They had a transfer ban, so they weren't able to bring in more help into the attack apart from Pulisic. So I knew that they were going to be starting the season that they wouldn't be as good as they were last year. And, just watching the game, Zuma had a game to forget, really. Even before he gave away the penalty, I think he was trying to pass the ball to Jorginho, and I think he slipped up, and I think it was Martial who almost scored it. So I'm not, even before Man United got the penalty, Zuma, in my opinion, was having a very poor game. And, their midfield wasn't really on points. Jorginho was trying to play a few balls, but it just wasn't working out. And, they really struggled in that day. United, like I said, weren't that good, but the thing is that they took their chances. Pogba, I think he had 2 assists in the second half. He didn't even have a great game. He just had those 2 moments of brilliance. And, when you're a player like Pogba, that's all you need sometimes to win games. Let's be real. On his day, he's a world-class player. I know sometimes he has attitude issues and all that. Sometimes it looks like he's not playing for the team. But really, any football fan will tell you that on his day, he is a world-class player. And he showed that against Chelsea. Sometimes you don't have to be at your best. You just need those 2 moments of brilliance. And that was enough to give United 2 goals. But, going back on Chelsea, it's going to be a really tough year for them. I think Tammy Abraham actually had a pretty good game. He played better than I thought he would, actually. I expected Giroud to start. I thought Giroud would be Chelsea's starting striker this season, but it looks like Frank Lampard is really putting a lot of trust in youth. And I'm surprised he also started Mason Mount. He had a decent game, but Tammy Abraham, he was playing pretty well. Like I said, he hit the post in the first half. He scored 20-something goals for Villa last year, so maybe I shouldn't be too surprised. But, it was a game against a new United defense, and I think he held his own pretty well. And he's going to have a big season ahead of him, Like I said, Hazard's gone. Pulisic is a new guy. But Abraham, in my opinion, he'll have a big year for Chelsea. He looks like he's going to be the main man up front. He looks like he's going to be the guy that they rely on. And Giroud will be coming off the bench. So that's why I think. I think Chelsea will they drop out of the top 6? I do not think so. Just based on how they played against United. Like I said, I know they lost 4-0, but they played pretty well. I don't think any team is getting into that top 6, to be honest. There's Leicester's, there's the Everton's, Wolves, obviously, but I just don't think that they will be able to surpass any team in the top 6, including Chelsea. So that's my take on it. But like I said, it's going to be a long year for Chelsea. A lot of stuff to work on. And the next question is there a better defense than Manchester United's? Well, that was a very impressive display at the back for United. No, they in my opinion, they don't have the best defense in the Premier League. They're still behind They're still behind Liverpool's defense. They're still behind City's defense, and probably Tottenham's as well. Harry Maguire, man, like a lot of people slated this guy not the player, but like more so I guess the board for spending 80 mil on Harry Maguire. But the thing that a lot of people need to realize is that no, do I think Harry Maguire is worth 80 million? No, but to Manchester United he's worth 80 million, and what that means is that he's clearly better than any option that they had. Like he's better than any center back option that they have. And he's so much better that he could literally be the difference between them playing in the Champions League next season and them playing in the Europa League. And you know how much the payday difference is between the Champions League and Europa League. Like it literally, the budget can literally affect the money that you earn between the competitions. Literally affects your transfer policy. Like we saw with Arsenal, them missing out on the Champions League, they literally had to realign their whole transfer budget. Let's be real. They had a list of A players that they were targeting, and A players if they made the Champions League, and B players they're targeting if they didn't make the Champions League. So, you know what I mean. Harry Maguire could literally be the difference between them playing Champions League football next season and them being in the Europa League. So for that reason, I do believe he's worth 80 million for Manchester United. And also the fact that it's Leicester City who had him, and Leicester City, let's be real, Leicester City they have money. Their owner is it's a really a lot of even a lot of these mid-table Premier League clubs, they have cash now. Because the Premier League has gotten so big, a lot of these clubs in the middle are able to keep on hold of their players now. You saw with Crystal Palace, Crystal Palace rejected a £70 million bid for Wilfried Zaha. I mean, that's insane. That just Crystal Palace, it's not even a club of West Ham size. This is Crystal Palace who are rejecting a £70 million pound bid for a player in his prime. That just shows you that these Premier League clubs now, they're able to hold on to their players now. So if United were they, and Harry Maguire, he's a tested and proven Premier League center back. So for 80 million, he is worth it for United. If you know what I mean. In the general scheme of things, 80 million. Is Van Dijk costs like 70 or 75 million? Is he better than Van Dijk? No, he's not. But for Manchester United and where they want to be, if you have to pay 80 million for a player like Harry Maguire, who will visibly increase your chances of getting into Champions League football, then yeah, it makes sense. United are still their biggest club in the Premier League, even though they haven't, obviously the last 5 years or so, the results on the pitch haven't been their favor, but they are the biggest team in the Premier League. They have the cash, 80 million. They'll make that back in, just like that. They're the biggest club in the Premier League. And if they want to be playing Champions League football, then 80 million for a Premier League proven player like Harry Maguire is a no deal for me, in my opinion. And, we'll see along the season. Wan-Bissaka also looked pretty good. In the preseason, he did look very good. United released a lot of clips on Twitter of him making slide tackles and all that stuff. He looked pretty good in the preseason. So, that's definitely a massive upgrade for United's defense. In my opinion, though, it's not the best in the league. We'll see. Maybe it is by the end of the season, but for now, it's still behind Liverpool's, Man City's, and probably Tottenham's as well. That's just my take. The next question I have is thoughts on VAR. Okay, well, that was interesting. Yeah, VAR. Last season I was excited, obviously, because there were a lot of weird, interesting calls that VAR would have obviously overturned. A lot of dives. A lot of no calls that VAR didn't pick up. So, sorry about that. Yeah, so I was looking forward to seeing VAR being used, and also we saw it being used in the Champions League last season, and it looked like it was pretty well functioning. And during some of the summer tournaments as well, we saw it. I saw it in the Gold Cup, the African Cup of Nations. And also what was the other tournaments? Copa America, and in the Women's World Cup as well. It looked pretty good in that. So I was excited to see it in the Premier League, but I was watching West Ham versus Man City, and it was just weird seeing all these. In my opinion, it was just too long of a time. Nuno said it Nuno, the Wolves boss. He said it perfectly. It's just too much time in between the decision making, and he brought up a good point. He's like, when you start hearing opposing fans celebrate a no goal, is that really what football is about? Is that really what we don't want that being the legacy of VAR, where it starts becoming where fans celebrate goals that are overturned. That really opened my eyes. I never thought of it from that perspective, and so mainly for that reason, I just hope that it's only in its infancy, VAR. Obviously, over time, I do believe and I'm confident that they'll make changes to it, and that it'll become more and more fluid, and we won't see these long stoppages in game time. But I just hope that it doesn't get to the point where fans start being hesitant to celebrate goals because they don't know, is VAR going to cancel it out? Because it's just, you don't want the atmosphere of football being ruined pretty much by technology. And it's a valid claim, and yes, we want every decision to be right. That's definitely important, and I'm all for VAR. It's just that the way it's being used could definitely be better, in my opinion. There's a lot of room for improvement, and for that reason, I do agree with what Nuno was saying about fans celebrating no goals. That's just not natural in football. When your fans celebrate, you want it to be because it's a goal, and so that's definitely something that'll stick with me. I'm looking forward to see what the Premier League does, because they Premier League officials and the people running it have definitely heard the complaints, and they're definitely going to be aware of what people are saying. So we'll see how it goes this season. Honestly, if it goes like how it is with West Ham versus Man City, then honestly, I'd rather just have it go back to where it was before. But like I said before, I am confident that it will be restructured in a way so that it will one day be more fluid. Alright, so this is the second half of my recording, just answering more questions. Honestly, I don't think I'll be able to get through all of them today. There's a lot more questions. I'm sorry, but I'll try my best to answer a lot more in the future. But let me just get to these ones. Pretty much talking about how will Wolves do, how will Leicester do, Brighton and Burnley. So let me start with Wolves. First of all, Wolves, in my opinion, they're not going to do as well this season. And I think because of two main things. First of all, they're playing in the Europa League, and history has shown that teams who enter the Europa League usually drop off in the total amount of points that they earn in their so-called second season, or it's called second season syndrome. I believe it's going to happen to Wolves, most likely. I don't see them finishing. I still think they'll finish in the top half, maybe like 9th, 10th, 8th at highest, but they're not going to be, I don't expect them to be the same overachievers that they have. They didn't really bring in enough quality for me to say that they've stretched their squad enough, because even in the smaller Europa League qualifying matches, they're playing a lot of first team players in those games. Yes, I know a lot of it's down to fitness, but you just have a feeling that they're going to try going for the Europa League, and in order to do that, their B team isn't really going to cut it, with all due respect. So they will have to play a lot of their first team players in those games, and then play in the Premier League games on Sunday. It's going to take a toll on the players. It'll result in injuries and fatigue, and in my opinion, there will be a drop in performances. I don't expect them to repeat the same heroics that they did last season. And I do really like what they've been doing. I like the manager. They have, obviously, everyone knows that they have that Portuguese influence in the squad. Thanks to Jorge Mendes, Nuno. A lot of players want to play for that team now. So what they were doing last season, it didn't really surprise me because I was not following, but like there was a lot of buzz with Wolves in the championship the year before. So I wasn't really surprised, and their style of play. So I wasn't really surprised when they were coming to the Prem and overachieving. I didn't expect them to finish 7th. I'll limit that. I was expecting maybe like a 10th place finish at highest, but they really did overachieve. Another reason, I also feel that a lot of teams have kind of figured out what Wolves do. They're a counter-attacking team, so I think that kind of explains why they struggled against lower league opposition last season. They kind of, when they played against teams that were clearly worse than them, they sat back and those teams allowed them to play football, and they just weren't able to really be as effective as they were when they played the typical counter-attacking football against the big guns. So I believe a lot of teams maybe have possibly will have figured out how to stop Wolves in that regard, and they'll lose some points from it. I still think they'll have a good season. I think they'll go pretty deep in the Europa League. I think maybe like a quarterfinal run will be a pretty good season for them, and they'll finish probably in the top half. But no, I don't think they're going to break into the top 6 this season. And that's just my take on it. I don't think they brought in enough players to really expand their squad enough so that they could be able to comfortably balance the toughness of playing Europa League and Premier League football. On to Leicester City now. How they do. In my opinion, I have them finishing 7th. I think they're going to have a really good season. Their biggest, they brought in Yuri Tielemans, obviously on a permanent deal. They had him last season. Jose Perez from Newcastle. Dennis Praet from Sampdoria. Justin from Luton. And that's it. But yeah, I'm surprised no one really went in for Tielemans. He had an excellent season, second half of the season with Leicester when he was on loan there. He really fit in there. He was at Monaco. Obviously, Monaco had their problems and issues, so they let him go out on loan. He was always a wonder kid on FIFA 15. Anyone who played FIFA remembers playing FIFA 15 will know that this guy was like 90 potential. So it's sick. It's crazy now. Like usually a lot of these times these FIFA wonder kids don't live up to the potential, but in this case, Yuri Tielemans is looking like he's heading that way. Just based on how he played last season, he's gonna have a big C year this time, man. I really like what Leicester are doing. I like that midfield trio: him, James Maddison, and Wilfred Ndidi. I think that's a really underrated midfield. A lot of people shouldn't be sleeping on that. I think that they're gonna do big things this season, Leicester City. I expect them to finish I think they'll be the best of the rest. Maybe they could have brought in someone to replace obviously Harry Maguire leaving to United. There was a lot of talk of maybe Duffy, Dunk, or Tarkovsky, or someone along those lines to replace him. But it looks like they're playing that Turkish guy. I'm not even going to bother saying. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to. But it looks like he's going to be partnering Johnny Evans in that defensive role. And then they obviously still have Wes Morgan. And they're able to keep on to Ben Chilwell, and Pereira had a good season last time with Leicester City. So, they have a good group. Brendan Rodgers really redeemed himself. His reputation kind of took a dip, obviously, with Liverpool after Dennis Suarez left. A lot of his managerial flaws were exposed, and he went down to Celtic. He kind of hid there for a bit. He kind of built up his reputation, and a lot of people kind of mocking him when he moved to Leicester City, but a lot of mainly Celtic fans just mocking him, saying, Leicester, you're trading. I remember there was a banner that said you traded something like you traded invincibility for mediocrity or something like that. I'm like, come on, with all due respect to the Scottish Premier League, Leicester City, a higher than average Premier League team, that's a step up. It's a step up in the managerial sense. So you can understand Brendan Rodgers making that decision. And it looks like the players really love playing for him. They have a new chairman. Obviously, unfortunately, because of his father's tragic death last season. But the vibe of the club this season is looking really, really positive. And they don't have any European football to distract them. And Ayoze Perez was also another clever buy. Get him from Newcastle. Newcastle have their own issues. But Ayoze Perez, that was another really good buy. It looks like he's going to be him. I don't know if he'll be playing with Vardy behind him. In my opinion, that was the transfer that was needed because, Okazaki wasn't getting any younger. Kelechi Iheanacho, my fellow Niger boy, he hasn't really been cutting it at Leicester City. So that was definitely someone that they needed to invest in. But looking at that team, I think they're going to do really big things this season. On to Brighton now. Funny enough, actually, Brighton and Hove Albion, I had them getting relegated, but I was taken aback by that performance on the first day against Watford. Really good performance. I didn't watch. I'm not gonna lie. I saw just the highlights, but based on what I saw, Graham Potter really knows. He's a good manager. A lot of people were. I remember I made a post about Graham Potter becoming manager of Brighton, and everyone was like hating on him and all that stuff. I've known about this guy because I remember his side, his Swedish Östersunds. They're playing a Europa League game against Arsenal, and they won. I think they won the first leg, and so that he became, and he took them from, I think, the Swedish 3rd or 4th division to Europa League football, and then beating Arsenal, like that definitely deserves a decent amount of clout. He's a really talented manager. He was building a project at Swansea last season. Obviously, he had Daniel James, another. Swansea had a really good, they had a good unit going on. He had Daniel James. I think Oliver McBurney, Sheffield United signed him. But, Graham Potter is a really good manager. It was kind of harsh the way that Chris Hughton was sacked. I'm not going to lie. He did what he had to do, which was keep them up in the top. But, the truth is that Brighton did have a very poor second half of the season. And you just have a feeling that a new manager was needed to come in to just, help change the overall atmosphere of the club. And Graham Potter, I'm excited to see what he's going to do with this Leicester side. It started out greatly with that 3-0 win against Watford. I did not see that coming. That was a very impressive win, mainly because Watford, they had a great season last year, but then, I do remember that they lost 3 times in a row to end the season, and then they did lose 6-0 against Man City. Yes, I know it's Man City, but either way, a great start for Brighton. I had them getting relegated. I don't know, maybe I'll have to change my mind now. One of my the people followed me, a Brighton fan, actually invited me to. He says he has season tickets, so he invited me to actually say I could actually come in and watch a game if I let. So maybe to work on that. Always wanted to go back to England. It's been like 10 years since I went, but a free Premier League game wouldn't be bad. But yeah, it's a great start for Brighton. It's going to be a big year for them. A lot of Neil Maupay, obviously their new signing. He scored on his debut. Aaron Moy, that was a very smart signing on a permanent deal. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. There's 37 games left in the season, and great start for Brighton so far. Next question is about Burnley, how they do. Well, Burnley, in my opinion, I kind of had them getting relegated too, actually. I don't know why, but I don't know. I thought maybe this would be the year that Sean Dyche's men ran out of luck. They didn't really do much in the transfer window. Jay Rodriguez, they brought in. Eric Peters from Stoke. They got Drinkwater on loan. So it's like they didn't really do much in the transfer window. But then when you think about how they ended the last season, they ended it. I remember early in last season, they were in the relegation zone. They were having a relegation battle. And then they just took off in the second half of the season. Ashley Barnes and Chris Wood, they could not stop scoring for fun. And I saw a stat the other day. It said that I think Ashley Barnes has scored the joint top scorer joint most Premier League goals in the calendar year of 2019, which is crazy because this guy he's a typical Burnley player, Route 1 football. You saw his goals against Southampton. They're very Burnley-esque, a lot of direct football. I think Eric Peters or whoever the left back was just booted it up forward. The Southampton defender struggled to head the ball out, and then Ashley Barnes was just there to pounce it in. He scores. He's a troublemaker. He's a troublemaker. I remember in Chelsea's 2-2 draw last season with Burnley. This guy was getting in people's faces. He's one of those guys where sometimes you'd face as a defender, and you'd probably be like, I don't want to play football anymore because he's a tough player to play against. And it's just they still have that strong defensive unit. Obviously, Tarkowski, Ben Mee. If they got Eric Peters, I think he got the assist on that goal. So it's gonna be an interesting year for Burnley. I didn't expect them to beat Southampton. Never mind 3-0. That's a statement win because Burnley actually don't score a lot of goals. They're not known for scoring a lot of goals. So I don't know if that's Southampton being poor defense or Burnley just going off. But I also think that it'll definitely be a big year for them. Will they get relegated? Probably not, but I had them kind of in maybe 16th or 17th. If they play more like that, then obviously they'll finish higher in the season. But yeah, that was definitely a great performance from them. On to the next question. Will Newcastle get relegated? And what do you think of the boycott? Okay, yeah. So yeah, I felt that Newcastle were a lot of people's favorites to get relegated this season. Really, if you think about it, they actually didn't have that bad of a transfer window. They actually spent a lot of money. Not a lot, but they spent money. But the problem is that Rafa has left, and Rafa has been arguably their best coach, their best manager in a very long time, and he's gone now, and only now they decide to start spending money. So I think that's kind of the issue that the fans have with Ashley, in that when they had this manager here, he wasn't spending the funds, and now that he's left, he decided to splash more cash. They spent, I think it was 40 million on Joe Linton. I saw him against Arsenal. He was winning balls. He looked decently impressive. It was $50 million, which is, I think that's around 40 million pounds. But it looked like he was winning headers. He's a physical presence. They got Saint-Maximin from OGC Nice. He's gonna be he's a really fast player. I saw him. He looked kind of rusty when he played against Arsenal, but with more game time, he's gonna come good. Will they get relegated? I don't know. I kind of want to say yes, because I just don't think they're not going to get the boost from the fans. 10% of their fans weren't there against Arsenal because of the whole boycott movement. They have something called Boycott Arsenal, and I read something about it on The Athletic. A lot of the fans, it was a rainy day. They had a tenth of the ground was empty, which is is a statement, because opening day game against a top 6 team, and it's on a Sunday, first game of the season, and 10% of your ground is empty. That's definitely a statement to Mike Ashley that these fans aren't happy. So it was definitely an eye opener. Will they get relegated? I think so. They brought in Andy Carroll. They brought in Joe Linton. John Shelby looked decent. Almiron was all right, but at the end of the day, they just didn't do enough to beat Arsenal. Joe Linton showed flashes of brilliance. I remember he had a good he headed though. He had a good header that, in my opinion, if he had gone that header on target, it would have possibly gone past Leno. He had another movement where he kind of got a lucky dribble, but it was still good technique. But he shot it and it went straight at Leno. So he's just brought up there to hold up the play, and he looks like if Newcastle can utilize their assets decently enough, that he can provide that. They lost Jose Perez. They lost Rondon. Those are their 2 top scorers. So I think I saw a stat now that those two were gone. Their the top scorer is Fabian Schär, which is it's just not something that you want to see as a Newcastle fan. What do I think of the boycott, though? I think it's needed because it's been clear for years that Mike Ashley just simply doesn't care about this club. He doesn't invest the funds. He's just happy to use it as a cash cow. As long as the club is making money, as long as there's no trouble with debts and all that, he's happy to sit back. And I remember there was talk of an Arab owner possibly buying them, cousin of Man City's owner or something like that. So there was a lot of, hope of Newcastle fans, but, obviously it doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon, or even if at all. So the mood around Newcastle has definitely become more and more sour. And yeah, I do understand the protests. Mike Ashley isn't one to spend his cash, and I can completely understand their frustrations. So it's going to be a very long year for Newcastle, in my opinion. The fans really need to get behind these players. Otherwise, they're probably going to go down to the championship for sure. I don't really the atmosphere is kind of dead against Arsenal. It looks soulless. The Arsenal fans were out chanting the Newcastle fans at some point. That's not something you want to see. That's not something that's encouraging for you as a player when your fans aren't out there lifting you up. So for that reason, it's going to be very hard for Newcastle to stay up if their fans aren't behind them. Almiron is going to have to do a lot. It's going to be a big year for him. Him and Joe Linton, the two key players in the attack, Saint-Maximin as well. Jetcher Williams, he had a poor game. I think he was at fault for that goal. I think Maitland-Niles, beat him to the ball and then crossed it to Aubameyang. But yeah, that's Newcastle. It's going to be a tough year for them. Let's see. The highlight of last season. Final question. Yeah, so the highlight of last season. Oh no, I have one more after that. Okay, yeah, one more question after this one. The highlight of last season. Honestly, for me, any of those Champions League comebacks, that was insane. That's probably the most fun, arguably the most entertaining Champions League season I've ever seen since I started watching football, and it's been like around 15 years. Yeah, about 15 years since I started watching football. That's definitely gone down as arguably one of the most, if not the most entertaining Champions League seasons. Just as a neutral, seeing all those comebacks, Juve coming back against Atletico, Ajax doing it, Ajax against, it was just insane. I don't think we'll ever witness another season like that in the Champions League again. I think, for me, Liverpool's 4-0 comeback win against Barca was probably the best of them all because, 3-0 down against Barca. Messi, the best player in the world. They didn't look good against Barca, and no one really expected them to come out of their shell and really go for that. And then they ended up winning the Champions League, obviously. In my opinion, that was probably the highlight of last season. Also, shout out to Vincent Kompany's goal against Leicester City that effectively won Man City the title, because in that game they looked bereft of ideas. I remember right before he scored that, Kelechi Iheanacho almost scored for Leicester City, actually, for his former club Man City. People making jokes that Kelechi was helping his former club win the title and all that, but Vincent Kompany, that was just an amazing goal. His last ever home game for Man City, his last ever game at the Etihad, actually, for Manchester City. And what a way to end your career as a Man City player with a goal like you couldn't write that script. That was unbelievable. So many magical moments last season. Another highlight, Kepa, the manager, everyone knows about the Kepa Sarri situation. That was definitely something to be notable. Townsend's goal against Man City. Well, that's a goal for the century. I don't think we'll ever see another goal like that as long as I'm alive. That's just an amazing volley that I don't think we're not, just the way he caught that. It was so random. All of a sudden, you just see him volley it. No one was expecting that. There were just so many magical moments last season, and I'm really excited to see more of them in the coming year. And now for the last question is, should Pochettino be sacked if Tottenham don't win any trophies this season? No, I don't think so, because As Pochettino is the reason Tottenham are where they are today. They don't spend a lot of money. They're mainly because Daniel Levy, who's known for being a cheap guy, understandably so, because they've been having to build a stadium in the past, and it's kind of like Arsenal with Highbury. They didn't spend any money last season, as obvious everyone knows. So it's been up to Pochettino to band these group of players together, to keep them together, and they all love playing for him. Now this summer he's been allowed to spend money. He's brought in Ndombele, Lo Celso, and Sessegnon. Those are all key. Ndombele already looks like a great buy. Obviously, he scored that goal against Villa that got Tottenham going. Christian Eriksen, it looks like they're gonna be keeping Christian Eriksen. He made such a difference when he came on. It was 1-1 when he came on, and then obviously he's gonna make such a key difference for this Tottenham side. But do I think Pochettino should be sacked? No, unbelievable. No, I don't think so. He got them to a Champions League final last season. They finished third. It also all depends on how. Honestly, I think there's a higher percentage chance of Pochettino leaving Tottenham rather than Tottenham severing ways with him, just because I just have a feeling that he's just getting tired of Tottenham's transfer policy. He wants the owner to splash more cash. Yes, they've done it with Ndombele, but he talks a lot about Tottenham not spending as much money as the other clubs, and I just have a feeling that a club like Real Madrid or maybe like United or Barca. He said actually no, not Barca. He's a former Espanyol manager. He said he'll never manage Barcelona in his life. He's a former Espanyol guy. I remember he said he'll never manage Arsenal or Barcelona and then some other team in Argentina in his life. So, but anyway, but like if there's a vacancy at a high profile club this year and they start targeting Pochettino, I just have a feeling that he's finally going to say enough is enough, and he'll leave Tottenham. But how will Tottenham do this season? It depends on if they keep Christian Eriksen. If they keep him, I can see them making a push for second place, Liverpool. I think Tottenham will finish third behind Liverpool and City. I don't think they'll go deep in the Champions League again. In my opinion, I'm not trying to sound like a hater or anything, but they kind of got a bit fortunate in the like a lot of things happened in their favor for them to reach the Champions League final last season. A lot of combinations went just perfectly right for them in order for them to reach the Champions League final. I don't see it happening again this season. I think there's a lot of teams that have gone stronger. So no, they shouldn't let go of Pochettino. That would just take their club back. But I think it's very likely that he's more likely to leave the club than they are to get rid of him. And yeah, looks like that's it for the recording podcast, the Kingdom of Spectators. That went a bit longer than I thought. I was hoping to do maybe just over half an hour. Ended up being almost 45 minutes or more around that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this season. My first ever recording. I'm going to post this to YouTube. I think maybe iTunes as well to get on that. I'm going to try getting it uploaded this week. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of good football, a lot of talking points this weekend already. Bundesliga, La Liga, all the other leagues start again in the coming weeks. That'll be exciting. Obviously, the Champions League, that's going to be lit. So, yeah, it's going to be a very exciting season of football to come. A lot of talking points ahead. And just want to say thank you to everyone once again who's been supporting the page. Keep sending me questions. I'll try answering more of the questions on my actual account. And, I have a lot of things planned for this year in regards to recording, making recordings. Obviously, this is my first time, so I hope to maybe, become more, increase the quality, bring more people on to just discuss about football. Just something I like to do. And, once again, thanks to everyone for supporting the page. And this is the Kingdom of Spectators signing out. Have a good week, everyone.